I wasn't expecting to see Jake again. Not like this, not with the wind carrying his scent across the porch. Not with those familiar storm gray eyes looking straight into mine. It had been 5 years since my mom married his dad, turning us into a mismatched family of two broken pieces trying to make something whole. Back then, Jake was the confident, flirty college guy who barely noticed the awkward 19-year-old girl struggling to find her place in a new family. He moved to California right after the wedding, chasing his tech career while I stayed in Seattle. Watching seasons change and learning how to pretend everything was fine. Now I was 24, working in marketing, freshly single after a bad breakup, with a man who made me feel invisible. So when my mom invited us all to the lake house for her second wedding anniversary, I didn't expect much, just a quiet weekend with too much wine and small talk. But the moment Jake stepped out of that black rental car, my heart skipped the kind of beat you don't recover from. He was different now, older, broader, with this calm energy that pulled me in like gravity. His scruff framed his jaw, and he wore that same cocky smirk, softened by something sad in his eyes. He hugged me like he meant it, like he missed me. And when his arms wrapped around me, a current passed through my skin. I told myself I imagined it. I had to. But as the weekend unfolded, the space between us started to shrink. We stayed up late playing cards and laughing over old memories. But now our conversations lingered in a different place. Longer eye contact, secret smiles, subtle touches that meant too much. One night, everyone had gone to bed, and Jake and I were left alone on the dock with just the stars and the sound of water brushing the wood beneath our feet. He sat close to close, and I could feel the warmth of his body, the rise and fall of his breath. "You've grown up," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. I looked at him, heart pounding, unsure if I should speak or run. But he didn't wait. Quay leaned in, and I didn't stop him. Our lips met like they'd been waiting for that moment for years. It wasn't just a kiss. It was slow, soft, and searching, like we were tasting something forbidden, something we shouldn't want but couldn't resist. That kiss changed everything. We didn't speak after, just sat there, stunned, afraid to ruin it or name it. We were step-siblings, not by blood, but by circumstance. And yet nothing about that kiss felt wrong. It felt ... real. Dangerous. I went to bed that night wide awake, my lips still tingling, my heart full of questions I wasn't ready to ask. All I knew was the air between us had shifted forever, and pretending it didn't matter would be the biggest lie of all. That summer evening on the dock didn't feel like a mistake, felt like the beginning of something messy and unforgettable. And deep down, I already knew. We had crossed a line we could never uncross. Asterisk after that kiss on the dock, nothing felt normal anymore, but neither of us tried to stop it. Jake was supposed to leave the next day, fly back to California, and return to his big city life. But he didn't. He said he needed a break from the stress, from everything, and stayed an extra week at the lake house. We both pretended it was no big deal. Our parents didn't notice. They were busy enjoying their anniversary, wrapped up in their own happiness, completely unaware of the storm brewing in their children's hearts. During the day, Jake and I acted like everything was fine, friendly, casual, like nothing had changed. But at night, it was different. Every glance across the dinner table held something unsaid. Every accidental touch lasted a little too long. And when we were finally alone, we stopped pretending. We gave in to the tension that had been growing between us for years. What started as a kiss became something deeper, more dangerous. We found ourselves slipping into each other's beds, whispering secrets in the dark, exploring a kind of connection that felt more intense than anything I'd ever known. It wasn't just sex, it was slow, careful, emotional. It was the kind of intimacy that made my heart ache, made me crave his voice, his touch, his attention. Jake was gentle, but there was hunger in him too, like he'd been waiting for this, just as long as I had. He told me about his past, about a woman who cheated on him and left him bitter and guarded. He opened up about his loneliness, his fear of never being truly loved for who he was, not just for what he had. And I shared my own wounds, how I'd always felt like the outsider, like I didn't belong in my own family. I told him about the guy who broke my heart last year, made me feel invisible even while he held me. With Jake, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, desired, safe. But we were living in a bubble, pretending our feelings didn't come with consequences. Because even if we weren't blood-related, people would never understand. We knew that. We just didn't care until the night I found the letter. I wasn't snooping. His jacket was draped over the couch, and something fell out when I picked it up. A handwritten envelope, soft from being folded and carried too long. I froze when I saw the name Mia. My stomach twisted as I opened it, my hands shaking. It was short, emotional. She missed him. She was pregnant, and she needed to talk. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Jake knew. He had this secret sitting in his pocket while he kissed me, while he made me believe we had something honest. I waited for him to come in from his walk, heart pounding, tears threatening. When I asked him about it, he didn't lie. He just looked at me with that same storm in his eyes and said quietly, "I didn't want to lose you." My voice cracked as I asked the only question that mattered. "But how could you not tell me?" He tried to explain, said he found out only recently that Mia had a history of manipulating him, that he needed time to figure it out. But I couldn't hear anything after that. All I could feel was the sharp sting of betrayal. Not because of Mia, but because the man I trusted with. My heart didn't trust me with the truth. Our secret love, once beautiful and fragile, now felt heavy, complicated, and suddenly very, very real. The silence between us after that night was louder than any argument we could have had. Jake didn't chase me when I walked out of the room in tears, and I didn't look back. I wanted him to fight for me, to explain more, to beg me to stay. He didn't. The weight of his silence crushed me more than the truth itself. I spent the next few days moving like a ghost through the lake house, trying to avoid him, trying to pretend I wasn't breaking inside. Every time I heard his footsteps or caught a glimpse of him in the hallway, my chest tightened. I didn't know how to look at him without remembering the betrayal. And yet, even with everything, I still loved him. That was the hardest part. Love doesn't disappear just because someone hurts you. If anything, it makes the pain worse. We shared something raw, something real. But now it felt tainted, like a beautiful song that ends in a wrong note. On our last night at the lake house, Jake finally knocked on my bedroom door. He looked tired, unshaven, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. "Can we talk?" he asked. Softly, I wanted to say no, but I nodded. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tightly, as if holding himself together. "I messed up," he began. "I should have told you the second I got that letter. I didn't know how. I was scared you'd leave." His voice cracked. "And I couldn't stand the thought of losing you before we even had a chance. I listened, but I couldn't stop the tears." "But you did lose me," I whispered. "Not because of her. Because you didn't trust me with the truth." His head dropped. "I've never felt like this before," he said. "Not with anyone. You make me feel like I'm finally home. I didn't want to lose that." My heart ached because I believed him. But belief doesn't erase damage. Love doesn't always fix what's been broken. I told him I needed space. That we both did. No matter how strong the chemistry was, we couldn't build something real without honesty and trust. The next morning, he left before sunrise. No goodbye. Just silence. Again, when I walked out to the dock hours later, the sky was gray. The water still. The place where we had first kissed now felt like a ghost town, beautiful, but empty. I wrapped my sweater tighter around me, as if it could protect me from the ache in my chest. I missed him, but I was also angry at him, at myself. At the unfairness of it all. We didn't choose to fall for each other. It just happened. But love isn't enough when fear and secrets get in the way. Back in Seattle, I threw myself into work, ignored texts from friends, and tried to keep myself busy. Every little thing reminded me of him as cologne in my scarf, a song we danced to on the radio, the way my bed suddenly felt too big. I tried to hate him. I really did. But how do you hate someone who made you feel seen for the first time in your life? Know if I'd ever hear from him again. And maybe that was the worst part. There was no closure, no clean ending, just this wide open space where our love used to live, now filled with questions, regrets, and silence. Asterisk, months passed, but Jake never really left me. Not in the ways that mattered. He haunted the edges of my life in quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts, in the way I avoided certain songs, or how I still paused at the dock during evening walks, waiting for a shadow that never came. I tried to move on, to forget. But forgetting someone you love is like trying to unfeel a heartbeat. I dated casually, smiled through dinners, pretended to laugh at jokes, but no one made me feel even close to how Jake did. I missed the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. I missed the warmth of his hands, the way his voice dropped when he got serious. I hated myself for still loving him, even after everything. Then, one rainy morning in March, I got a letter. It was sitting in my mailbox like a ghost from a past I'd buried. No return address, just my name in Jake's handwriting. I stared at it for hours before opening it. His words were messy, raw, emotional. He said he'd thought of calling 1,000 times, but he didn't want to mess things up more. He told me he left LA. He'd walked away from the apartment, the job, the noise. Mia's baby wasn't his. She had finally admitted the truth after he demanded a paternity test. And he hadn't just left her. He left that version of himself, the man who let fear make decisions, the man who stayed quiet when love deserved truth. He told me I deserved more than silence. That I deserved someone who would choose me, every time, without question. Last line of the letter said, "If you still feel even half of what I feel, ... meet me at the dock." My hands trembled as I read it again and again. A part of me wanted to throw it away, to protect myself from more hurt. But another part, stronger, louder, whispered, "Go." That night the rain was heavy and the lake was dark and quiet, but I drove anyway. My heart pounded the whole way. I didn't know what I'd find. I didn't even know if he'd show. But when I stepped onto the dock, soaked and shaking there, he was standing at the edge, eyes locked on mine, like no time had passed. He didn't speak right away. He just opened his arms, and I ran into them like I'd been waiting my whole life. We didn't need words, not at first. It's the way his arms wrapped around me said, "Everything, I'm here. I'm sorry. Still love you." Stood there in the rain, two broken people who never stopped loving each other, even when the world told us we couldn't. He kissed me like it was the first time, like he'd been holding his breath for months. And I kissed him back like I was finally alive again. We knew it wouldn't be easy. Love never is, especially when it's wrapped in complications. But we also knew what we had was worth it. Real love is messy. It's full of fear and pain and truth, but it's also full of healing. Choosing each other even after the storm. Jake and I started again, not as step-siblings, not as a mistake, but as two people who finally decided to stop running. We built something real, something honest. And though the past still lived in us, it no longer controlled us. Some love. Stories aren't perfect. They're not clean or simple. But they're real and ours. Ours was worth every scar.